Hello. There's this feeling. I think it's familiar to so many of us. The desire to just disappear, not in a bad way, but just to find yourself somewhere else, in another city, another country, maybe even on another planet. A place where everything is different, where no one knows you, and where, just maybe, you'll finally be understood. If this sounds even vaguely familiar, then Pixar's movie Elio most likely struck a chord with you. At first glance, it's a vibrant story about a boy who gets abducted by aliens. But I want to invite you to look deeper, because in reality, this isn't a story about outer space. It's a story about us, about our own inner universe. And today, we're going to try to understand it, drawing on powerful tools like psychoanalysis and the concept of the hero's journey. But don't be intimidated by those words. Everything will be very simple, and I hope very clear. So let's get to know Elio a little better. Who is he at the beginning? He's a classic outcast, but, and this is a key point you astutely observed, he isn't so much a victim of circumstance as he is the architect of his own loneliness. He makes himself an outcast, and he doesn't do it because life is good. At the heart of it all lies trauma, a deep, fundamental wound, the loss of his parents. In psychology, especially if we look at it through a Freudian lens, losing parents in childhood is like losing an entire world. It's the loss of a basic sense of security, the loss of one's own paradise. A world that was once understandable and safe suddenly becomes hostile and unpredictable. And here, a brilliant parallel immediately comes to mind with another Pixar character, Lilo from Lilo and Stitch. Remember her? She's also an orphan. She's also considered weird. She's also desperately lonely. But her reaction to trauma is an explosion outward. She's aggressive. She fights. She screams her pain at the world. Elio chooses a different path. His explosion is directed inward. He doesn't scream. He goes silent. He doesn't attack. He builds a fortress around himself. And this fortress is his retreat into the world of technology. This isn't just a hobby with gadgets and computers. No, it's the creation of an alternative, safe reality. A world that obeys logic, schematics, signals. A world that can be controlled. Unlike the real world, which can take your loved ones away at any moment. His room, filled with equipment, is his bunker, his cocoon, where he can hide from the chaos of emotions and the unpredictability of life. And what about his famous eyepatch? It's an incredibly powerful symbol. He's not just wearing it for style. He is literally covering one of his eyes to the reality that has hurt him. He chooses not to see the world in its entirety, so the world can't hurt him again. And when he sends his signals into space, it's not really a search for aliens. It's a cry from the soul, sent from his bunker. It's a desperate attempt to make contact, but on his own terms, through the filter of technology, at a safe distance. He wants to be heard, but he's afraid of being seen. He's looking for someone out there, because it's unbearably painful for him to be right here. And so, in this state, in his technological cocoon, hidden from the world and from himself, he gets a response. The universe hears his call, but it gives him something entirely different from what he asked for. He wanted safe, distant contact, and instead he got an abduction, responsibility, and was thrown right into the thick of it all. And this is where his real journey begins, a journey not so much across the galaxy, but deep into himself. But more on that in the next part. So Elio is abducted. His wish to escape has been fulfilled with resounding success. And this is where his story perfectly aligns with the structure that the great mythologist Joseph Campbell called the hero's journey. Simply put, it's a universal blueprint for almost all great stories. A hero leaves their ordinary world, goes through a series of trials, and returns transformed. But in Elio's case, there's a stunning psychological twist. His call to adventure isn't a summons to save a princess. It's quite literally the materialized consequence of his trauma. He wanted to escape reality so badly that reality itself ejected him into space. It's like constantly thinking, I wish I didn't have to go to work. And one morning, your house, bed and all, teleports to a tropical island. The wish is granted, but now you have to deal with it. And herein lies the brilliant irony embedded by the creators. Elio ran away from the world of people because he found it difficult to communicate. And where did he end up? In the Communiverse, in a galactic United Nations, where communication, diplomacy, and the ability to negotiate are the main conditions for survival. The universe is literally telling him, oh, you're afraid to communicate? Fine. From now on, your entire life will depend on it. This isn't a punishment. It's a radical form of therapy. It's here, in this world where he's forced to play the role of Earth leader, that the most important meeting of his life occurs, the meeting with himself, or rather, with his shadow. In Jungian psychology, the shadow isn't something evil. It's the parts of our personality that we don't accept, that we suppress and hide from others and from ourselves. This could be our ambition, our strength, our confidence, our anger, anything we deem improper or unacceptable. Elio, the outcast boy, was hiding the image of a strong, significant, self-assured leader in his shadow, the very thing he desperately wanted to be, but was afraid to admit to himself. And so his lie, I am the leader of Earth, is not just a fabrication. It's him unconsciously putting on the mask of his shadow. He literally becomes the one he was suppressing. And his entire journey in the Communiverse isn't just a series of amusing situations. It's the complex psychological process of integrating the shadow. He's forced to play this role, and through this performance, through this fake it till you make it mentality, he gradually begins to discover these qualities within himself. Think about his trials. Every encounter with alien leaders, every argument, every difficult conversation is a test. At first, he tries to get by on his lie, on deception. But time and again, the situation forces him to use not his fabricated credentials, but his real qualities, his cleverness, his unconventional thinking, his empathy, and most importantly, his kindness. He starts solving problems not as the fictional leader, but as the real Elio. And it works. Without even realizing it, he begins to claim the power of his shadow. And of course, he finds helpers on this path. His Aunt Olga, who from a distance tries to understand what's happening and becomes his beacon, his connection to home. And even more importantly, Ambassador Grigon's son, his friendship with the enemy's son, is a pivotal moment. It's the first time in a long while that Elio builds a real, sincere connection, not based on a role or personal gain, but simply because he met a kindred spirit. This friendship becomes proof to him that he can be accepted for who he is, not for who he pretends to be. Slowly, step by step, he is undergoing his cosmic therapy. He's still afraid, he's still lying, but an irreversible process of healing has already begun inside him. And this brings us to the culmination of his journey, to the ultimate trial he must face to finally return home, not just to Earth, but to himself. And so, we arrive at the most crucial part, the point where the hero must face their greatest fear to receive their greatest gift. In fairy tales, this is often a battle with a dragon. But for Elio, a boy who built his entire new life on a lie, the ultimate dragon is the truth. His greatest trial is not a fight with blasters. It is a confession. The moment when he must stand before the entire galaxy and say, I am not who I pretend to be. I am not a leader. I'm just a small, scared boy. Can you imagine the terror of that for him? His entire survival strategy, his whole protective cocoon, was built on no one ever finding out the truth. For him, exposure is tantamount to annihilation. And then he does it. He takes off the mask. He allows his shadow, that image of a strong leader, to dissolve, and he stands before everyone, completely vulnerable. In that moment, he expects the worst: punishment, exile, contempt. But a miracle happens. After this, the return home to Earth is no longer an escape, but a conscious choice. He returns, but he is a completely different person. The technological cocoon he so meticulously built in his room is no longer needed, not because he's fallen out of love with technology, but because he no longer needs to hide in it. He can go out into the world without fear of it hurting him. His relationship with his aunt, once full of misunderstanding, reaches a whole new level of closeness. Now he can be honest, open, and vulnerable with her, because he has finally allowed himself to be that way with himself. And here we come to the most important conclusion that I believe Pixar offers to each of us. Sometimes, like Elio, we build walls around ourselves. Some of us retreat into work, some into video games, some into the endless scroll of social media. We create safe cocoons for ourselves to hide from a world that seems complex, hostile, or simply too painful. We dream of escaping somewhere. Somewhere everything will be different. But Elio's story gently, without lecturing, suggests to us that true healing doesn't happen when we run away, but when we find the courage to face our own aliens, our fears, our traumas, our shadows. Elio had to fly to the other side of the galaxy, not to escape, but to find his way back to himself. And perhaps we don't need to wait to be abducted by aliens. Perhaps our own hero's journey is simply the resolve to take off our eye patch, to step out of our bunker, and to risk being real in this imperfect, but still our one and only world. And to discover that it is in our vulnerability that our greatest strength lies. Thank you for walking this path with me. It is precisely in this moment, in his moment of maximum vulnerability and honesty, if he finds his true strength. He is not cast out. On the contrary, his sincerity touches the hearts of those who could not be moved by any political argument. His truth proves to be more powerful than any lie. In Campbell's mythology, this is called receiving the boon of the goddess, or the elixir. And Elio's gift is the realization of a simple, yet incredibly profound truth. Your strength isn't in who you pretend to be, but in who you truly are. You don't need to be someone else to be accepted and loved. It's enough to just be yourself. This is the catharsis. This is the healing of his core wound.